You're watching the world now. United States and India seem to be moving towards achieving a balance in bilateral ties. In the Indian Prime Minister's visit to the U.S., both leaders made their positions clear. We have more in this report.
Just hours after the U.S. president announced sweeping tariffs against India, both leaders met at the White House in Washington, D.C., unveiling trade pacts and presenting their positions on key issues. Trade and immigration also took center stage during their bilateral meeting. President Trump was asked a question about tariffs imposed by India on the United States, to which he replied that the U.S. reciprocates to gestures similarly.
It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal.
Mr. Trump says India will import more oil and gas to cut trade deficits, to which Prime Minister Modi says a $500 billion US target has been set for bilateral trade with the US.
And we are of the opinion that anybody who enters another country illegally, they have absolutely no right to be in that country.
The American president did not also keep his views on illegal migration away from the Indian Prime Minister. The war between Russia and Ukraine was not sidelined.
I think that when you look at Ukraine and when you look at the mess that they're in, it's got to be ended and it's got to be stopped. Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory, and they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war, and Biden said it, and Zelensky said it. And I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war. But from long before Putin, they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint. I think everybody knew that. Now, if a better deal can be negotiated, if they're able to make a deal where they can do that, that's fine with me. I really don't care. I want that bloodshed to stop.
The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi told reporters in the Oval Office that he expects to walk twice as fast with Mr. Trump during his second term in office.
Let's bring in national editor, Greater Kashmir in Delhi, Saridel Bearer. Thanks for joining us on The World Now. I'd like us to begin with what appears a brewing trade tension. How do you think the U.S.-India trade relationship will evolve, considering the sweeping tariffs announced by President Trump just hours before that meeting?
Yeah. I personally see that this was more or less like a reinforcement of their commitments on the trade, defense, immigration, on many of the issues. You see, India has got a good system with the U.S., which is called as 2+2, where both defense as well as the Secretary of State, as well as from India, our foreign minister, as well as Minister of Defense, have been talking regularly. So there's already a process. The good thing about what I see it as a positive note, that India has been able to buy time till fall, where negotiations will take place. And if you look into, as far as India's business are concerned, India has already reduced some of the tariffs on its own. For example, for the Davidson motorcycles and others. So India has been planning, looking into it. And I think relationship is going to grow between the two. Why? Because Americans want to do massive business as far as defense is concerned. And they already have entered, according to the MOU which they have signed. It's not exactly MOU, but the joint statement which has come up, and finally they are going to sign about it. So it's a 10 years of defense agreement which is there, in which India is going to buy a lot of things, including the fifth generation planes. I mean, from space to sea to air to land, all those types of defense equipments which are required. So I think it's going to be a win-win deal for both the countries.
It sounds good, but we had the U.S. president also mention that the U.S. will reciprocate India's tariffs. How do you think this will impact the economy in India, and what strategies can your country employ to mitigate potential losses?
See, Narendra Modi was quite blunt, saying that I'll have to see the India's interest. The way you have been looking into the America first, I'll look into the India first. And I personally see that US needs India more than what India needs US at the present time. And India, again, if you go by the statement of Narendra Modi, he said, I am not neutral. I am with the peace. And this is what we want. And he's the only leader who again has got a lifespan of a prime minister for the next 5 years, because he has won for the 3 years. And Trump is only going to stay for the 4 years. And also he has got one of the best relations with Putin. And also Zelensky, he has been talking. So India has been maintaining, I would say, that their position with all these actors, all these leaders. Now, India, for example, despite sanctions on Iran, used to buy a lot of oil. I'm sure Americans must be angry, and this is one of the reasons Americans also want to sell oil and gas. And I think a major agreement is going to take place where India is also going to buy oil and gas from US.
Exactly, because India, we understand, will import more oil and gas to cut trade deficits. But what do you think will be the implication of this agreement for India's energy security and, more importantly, its relations with other energy producing nations?
I think India has, you see, one thing where India is quite lucky enough is because, which is, I would say a good and bad also, that India's population continues to increase even today. It's 1.4 billion population which they have to serve. I mean, even if you collect all of the Europe, it becomes small. And look into the consumption which India is doing nowadays. India is quite developing, targeting for their 5 trillion by the next 10 or 15 years economy. And things are really improving as far as India is concerned. So most of the developed countries do want to come and establish themselves in India. And India is giving a lot of favoritism. There are hurdles. There are many issues which India still needs to improve, which already even Trump told them about a little of that how other companies can, they can only reach once these tariffs and other things are there. But it depends. I think there are going to be hard negotiations. But the good thing, as I said, that India has been able to go up to the fall. And now the other thing which is going to be very important will be the visit of the president of US and the Quad meeting which is going to take place. Again, US requires India. India doesn't require US in the Quad for the Indo-Pacific.
Just like we all need one another, Prime Minister Modi announced a $500 billion target for bilateral trade with the US by 2030. What are the key sectors you think will drive this growth? Do you also envisage challenges that need to be addressed to achieve this huge target?
See, it's already, I mean, if you look into the India's, it's more or less like they are asking for double, and they just want to make it double. But imagine India is massively now involved in the space, in the pharmaceuticals. Now, also as far as the artificial intelligence is concerned. And then India has got some minerals which Americans are interested, especially for the new batteries of lithium. And that is where some more trades are going to take place. I mean, technology will be one front where a lot of business is going to take place. Why? Because India dominates as far as Silicon Valley is concerned in the US. You look into all these CEOs, they're all Indians. And even if you look into the present scenario, there are Indian Americans who are working along with Trump at many of these positions. So I personally see that India continues to grow at from 6 to 7% GDP. And India's diaspora is going to invest in a huge way. Of course, there are challenges. You never know as far as the way world is going. Until unless the peace is there, especially in the West Asia, I don't see them far away from India because India massively gets affected because of the many of the Indians who have been living in those areas and foreign remittance which gets back into India. But energy is another sector where things are going to work in a big way. There are chances that both of them may start working in the third country also. So the trade is going to increase multifold as far as India is concerned. But the biggest buy which India is going to do is in the defense also. You look into the amount of logistics which India plans to provide to the US. I think there could be a major investment in both defense, in trade also, as far as many items are concerned, especially in agriculture. If you look into the technology, the new technology. So things are going to improve, I personally feel, with challenges, but things are going to move forward in the two countries.
I like your optimism. The meeting highlighted defense and immigration as key areas of discussion. There are thoughts on the potential for increased defense cooperation between the two nations, especially given the U.S. plans to supply F-35 combat jets to India.
Oh, yes.
So the U.S.-India relationship, no doubt, has undergone significant transformation since the Cold War era. We're opening a new chapter, and we're hoping that this will be better than what we've seen before. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Arinder Obero is National Editor, Greater Kashmir. He joined me live from Delhi in India.
Thank you for having me.
In Panama, government has announced the arrival of a U.S. Air Force plane carrying 119 migrants from various countries.